Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rouge Rugby podcast. I'm Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett. Derek, how have you been?
Oh man, not too bad. It's been a pretty decent week, all things considered. Quite a bit of MLR news to kind of get to. I know also, super cool last week having Jamie McKenzie on for the 100th episode. We didn't really talk about it all that much, but it's kind of crazy to the fact that we've made 100 of these. It's in, I guess, when did we start? 2019, going through we started at a weird time. It was like
you started in 2019.
Yeah,
I started in 2020.
Yeah, exactly. You came on early. But it was like we started it like halfway through the season, I think. Like, probably even more than that. I think like the arrows were like handedly like at home by the time I think me and Dan actually started that. So like it's kind of cool that hits 100, and I mean, kind of even just like kind of looking back at like past episodes and stuff, we've had a lot of like cool guests on, and it's been a pretty fun ride though. So it's cool even I guess anchor, like I guess with the place that we kind of used to like put the podcast up to the world, it had like one of those like Spotify wrapped things, and apparently there's a few people that were like their number one podcast for. So I've no idea who those people are, but thank you. So that's kind of cool.
Right.
And also I guess we got to give a shout out to Dan, because Dan left our podcast after starting it, and his reason was that he was going to have a baby soon, and that baby Theodore was born. I can't remember when he said, sometime this past week.
So, this past weekend, yes.
This past weekend. So
yeah,
and already showing him rugby games. So Theodore is apparently a big rugby fan already.
Yeah, well, like we said, Theodore, name of Dan's new son. He's doing well, as is the mother Cat. Again, congratulations to Dan and now extended family. All the Arrows need to do now is start making baby onesies and having headphones, noise cancelling earphones, so you can bring them along to a few games. I think that's only fair.
Yeah, there you go. What is the appropriate age to bring a child to a rugby game, like for the first time?
I say the sooner the better. They're not going to know what's going on.
Like you're from Wales, so you're like, if they can breathe, they go.
Yes.
It's like, it's like you go from the hospital to like Millennium Stadium or something, right? I'm assuming that's what happened to you, right, Stu?
The Millennium wasn't built when I was born.
All right. Well, I don't. Okay. So what stadium did they play up before? I'm assuming that's
it was a national stadium, but obviously it was a case of every baby in Wales, once they're born, comes out, and then you have to pass them to the mother.
Yeah, that's how like the doctors like move you through like the different units in the hospital. The hospital's actually inside the rugby stadium.
Yeah,
like Alan Wynne Jones, right? If you're born in Wales yesterday, Alan Wynne Jones is actually your doctor. That's just how it works in Wales.
All right, medical marvels aside, we need to talk about it, because it's been 2 weeks worth of news that has passed, because obviously we're talking to Jamie, so enthralled in his story that we didn't actually bring up any of the news. So let's get to it, and we're going to be starting with the Toronto Arrows. So with the Arrows, there have been some coaching changes, the big news being that Peter Smith has been promoted to head coach. Now we all know that Aaron Carpenter has mutually agreed with the Arrows to leave earlier this season. So joining as the forwards and set piece coach will be Francisco de Formes, a Chilean player who has done coaching in New Zealand. And that means that Chris Silverthorne, the previous head coach, has now transitioned to director of player development. So Derek, what do you make of this news that Peter Smith being promoted to head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, it's like, I know you kind of said with that intro that we didn't really talk about a whole lot of news last week when we were interviewing Jamie McKenzie, but we did get him to touch on the Arrows offseason up until this point. And that was the week that the announcement of the coaching change the coaching changes kind of came down. Although I feel like it's like one of those things that we kind of knew it was coming, because we got the news of Chris Silverthorne kind of we knew that Chris Silverthorne would be taking a different role with the team a while back. That came out. time is a weird construct. I don't even remember how long ago that was.
Time is a flat circle.
Yeah, exactly. But it was earlier in this off season where that information came out. But I think the one thing that really kind of sticks out is Jamie McKenzie is really the first player that I think we've had a chance to talk to since the coaching change. And he was really excited to see that Peter Smith um was going to be the new head coach, right? So I think obviously we've seen kind of the attacking structure that he has deployed for the Toronto Arrows in the past seasons, and it's a when it's clicking, it's a fun, exciting brand of rugby, and you have a with Smith too, right? It's like you have a guy that's won an MLR championship, right? He was part of that inaugural Seawolves squad that took home a title in the first season, right? So having like that type of guy that understands like what it takes to win, not only just win like in general, but win specifically in Major League Rugby. To have him on the coaching staff already has been an asset. So I mean, he can kind of bring that to the head coaching position. I think, by all accounts, whether you're talking to players or everybody else within the Arrows actual staff, I've heard nothing but glowing reviews for everything that Peter Smith does, from like the way he thinks about the game to just like his preparation and how he goes about just his interactions with players and and things like that, right? It's like it's never been anything but positive. So it's great to see that he's kind of advancing in his coaching career. He, as the Arrows, he, according to America's Rugby News too, just 33 years old. He's going to be the youngest head coach in Major League Rugby too, right? So
Oh, wow. I didn't
that's
know that.
yeah. So that's that kind of shows like how, and I mean, he only like you said, he was playing in 2018, right? So he's already gone from being an assistant in that short time, right, off from an assistant coach to head coach in Major League Rugby. And obviously being a young coach too, it's like that's a lot of there's a lot of room to still grow and develop, right? And I think it's an exciting time for the Toronto Arrows, and it's a exciting time for Peter Smith taking this next step in his career. Look forward to seeing what he does with while kind of being at the helm of the squad here. So um also kind of interesting too, like it is interesting seeing like Chris Silverthorne going to director of player development, and you kind of looking at the Arrows press release. It says that it's quoted as saying Chris can now focus on absolutely crucial role in identifying Canadian players for our roster in the next cycle of MLR and national team duty. um which is kind of cool because that sentence almost vaguely sounds like a scout, in a really
Yeah.
yeah, like kind of in like vague sort of terms, right? And we know that that's been one of the things that the Arrows and Rugby Canada have kind of been focusing on lately is how to grow, I guess, how to grow that ability to identify younger players and get them into academies or get them into whatever programs and stuff that they need in order to develop the actual talent as players. So to me, it almost seems like the Arrows kind of who have already done a great job in setting up an academy, right, like continue to seem to be continuing to kind of take those extra steps to developing that young Canadian talent. So that's really good. And then obviously you got the new guy, Francisco de Formes, as you said, from Chile. Initially, he's played pro in Europe. He's most recently been coaching. He's been in Hawke's Bay in New Zealand. They won a championship last year, so he's coming fresh off a ship right now. So it's not bad. And he was the scrum coach down there. Obviously, he's coming over being the forwards and set piece coach here. Um, Really kind of an interesting thing that I would encourage all fans to do is actually a very recently, like in October, he did an interview on a podcast called the Wandering Bear Sports Podcast. And it's literally just him and the host of the show talking about how to coach scrums and like how to like prepare a team like for like how to prepare the players in the scrum for games, kind of different sort of philosophies and stuff on like how to go about approaching scrums, different strategies within the scrum. And it's actually like if you're kind of into like some of that extra like tactical stuff on rugby, it's actually super interesting to listen to because they kind of go into detail on like everything from just like how to arrange your practice to like the different ways like the locks can bind that and how that impacts the front row, and like how you actually like study film to kind of see what the opposing team's scrum can do like before a game and stuff. And even like trying to figure out based on the players that you have what's going to be like the best way to like arrange the players like in like the scrum and stuff too, like just as far as like heights and different weights and heights and how everything all kind of matches up for certain players. So kind of a super interesting super kind of interesting one. It's interesting just to hear a coach kind of talk about the scrum, because I feel like the scrum, to people that haven't played, to like especially to like new fans and stuff, to people that haven't really played rugby or haven't played rugby or kind of coming in and watching Major League Rugby, becoming new rugby fans, I feel like the scrum is kind of one of those areas where it is kind of difficult to explain sometimes.
Yep.
Difficult to explain like kind of what's going on in there. And I think I would recommend listening to it for anybody that is out there, where like it does kind of give you a little bit of insight as to like what like coaches specifically are kind of looking for and like what they would consider a good scrum. And it's coming from the new Arrows forwards and set piece coach, right? So I would imagine that many of the philosophies and the ideas that he has, especially around like practice and just like how to approach the scrum, I would imagine he's going to be trying to implement with the Toronto Arrows this, as training camp begins, going into training camp begins, and then going into obviously the preseason and all of the 2022 season. I would imagine there's he's going to be implementing quite a bit of those ideas. So um I guess do you have anything to add to that, Stu, about Smith, DeForma, Silverthorne kind of changing, or any of the other positions that were kind of announced? We got Hector coming back still, Lozada still the as the performance analyst, John Gillis returning as the head physician, Neil McDougall back as the team manager, Sean Harrison and Scott Shannon back as the strength and conditioning coach and head athletic therapist, respectively, as well. Anything?
Well, I think you missed Mr. Rob Howley will be returning to the club as a
Oh,
consultant
I didn't
as
miss
well.
him. I'm just letting you give your shout out to your Welsh brethren.
Absolutely. Sure. Perfect recovery. So yeah, I think now Chris Silverthorne's been with the team since the start. He's obviously
Well,
has
I
the
mean, so
experience
many of these
from.
guys too have been all the way through like the
Oh yeah,
Imperial Blues and
but
stuff too. Like
but
even before
he's
the
been the
team.
head honcho. He's been the
Yeah.
guy making the calls and stuff like that. And now, we'd heard rumors. It was posted on like America's Rugby News with the MLR off-season updates that he was looking at a more um, behind-the-scenes approach role. And I was saying at the time, well, director of rugby is such a vague term
Mhm.
that this director of player development could kind of be seen as a in the vagueness of director. I mean, they both have director in the title, so
Yeah. I
you're
mean,
already halfway there. At the same time, as in, I think that it's good that this has finally come out now because it was kind of, like I said, it was posted on like America's Rugby News. It was mentioned on like social media and Reddit, and having it confirmed as like this is now the head coach. This is
yeah.
the backs coach. This will be the forwards and set piece coach. These are the people who are returning. Because obviously we found out that Aaron Carpenter and the Arrows had agreed to mutually part ways
Mhm.
before this came out. So and it's one of the things of like when nothing's going on, it's just like, oh, maybe it could be this or maybe it could be that.
Maybe it could,
I honestly had an interaction on Reddit of someone saying that, oh yeah, these two people didn't get along well, and I was like, well, one of them wasn't in Atlanta for the entire season and one of them was, so unless it was a Zoom call that went wrong, I
I
don't
think
believe that.
I know what you're talking about, and like, yeah,
Yeah.
apparently a lot of that was just nonsense. If
Yeah.
I think I know what
and
you're the
and,
post and
and
stuff you're
also and
talking
also
about.
one of the things of saying, because I think what a lot of the issues that everyone had was just being in
It's
Atlanta
tough.
for
Yeah, like
all that time. But someone was saying that, oh, Chris lost the locker room. And they go, oh, when did he lose the locker room? Oh, it was at the end of the season. So after being in Atlanta for 16 weeks.
Yeah,
It's
I just
anyway. No, as obviously Chris Silverthorne has respect of everyone within the Arrows, and otherwise he wouldn't still be with the Arrows in this role. So I think, as you mentioned, Peter Smith, he's been on a winning team in MLR. He's hopefully gonna be the youngest head coach to lift the shield as well at the end of the 2022 season as well. And let's be like the Seawolves. They've had 3 head coaches in a season, so
oh my god,
having a new head coach after 3 seasons,
I still,
it's all relative. It's all
I think throughout the history of MLR, you get, whether it's the coaching staff or the players, the Arrows have had the best continuity or personnel retention.
Absolutely,
yeah,
and I think that
really,
it is,
and I think that's why it's great too to see what I do really like about the fact that Peter Smith is the new head coach. Especially one, because you heard it when we were talking to Jamie McKenzie last week, right? And he was talking about how much he liked having Peter Smith as a coach.
Yeah.
Right. He, through the past 2 years or whatever. And you know what I mean? And it's you can kind of promote from within. And it's the players already have familiarity with them. Right.
Yeah.
They probably know what he expects from a training session or from a practice or from a workout, or what he expects when watching film or anything, right? And it's he probably knows all the expectations that they probably have as a team and how they want to perform. It's the players already have an idea probably of how he wants to run a team, right? And it's promoting from within can be a good thing, right? And it's I think even LA did that too, right? It's they bumped the assistant coach up to the head coach once,
and they bumped up a former player to assistant.
Yeah,
coach,
exactly. So. It's you kind of if you're having
familiarity helps.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's good, and I think it's the way to go in that regard too. And it's the Seawolves are kind of interesting because they had so many issues with their coaches and kept winning for the first 2 years of the MLR, right? They found, despite some of the issues that they had getting, with the coaching staff, they found ways to win. But, they had a pretty bad 2020. Even before, and I'm saying that even the first 5 games that they played in 2020 were pretty bad.
They only won one of those games.
Yeah, and then
lost the last game.
And then
should have won.
They were one of the worst teams in the league last year. And if it wasn't for the fact that the Houston's in their division, they would have probably been the worst team in the league last year. But and I think but I don't know, it looks like they're kind of starting to set the ship right out there as well too. Hopefully they got because they got Clark out there now, so it's maybe that's a little bit more of a long-term you actually understand who your coach is going to be for the full season kind of situation. But either way, I feel the bit of a tangent here, but ultimately, kind of happy with what the Arrows have announced from their coaching staff so far. So we'll see how it goes in the next couple of weeks too, if there's any other additions or whatnot. But we got a couple transition to a couple of the new, or I guess no new players, but we got a couple of re-signing announcements going from the past week too.
Yes, we have a lot of 3 fan favorites coming back for the 2022 season. At scrum half, we have Andrew Ferguson. At flanker, we have Marcelo Rainwright. And at winger, we have Johnny Sheridan. So at this point now, the Arrows have announced 26 players for the 2022 season. So it's been a quiet week. It's months too early. This isn't the full roster, but if you needed an Arrows starting 15
tomorrow,
Derek,
for Sunday or Saturday, what I guess the weekend.
Yeah, well, it's the Grey Cup coming on, and they decide we're having a halftime show of a rugby match, and you need the Arrows versus the Atlantic Selects.
Yeah,
Who who will be
I
your
think
starting
the
15?
the arrows actually play. It's going to be like you ever watch wrestling? They have the Money in the Bank thing. That's what the
Yeah.
arrows after the Grey Cup game. The arrows get to run down with the Money in the Bank suitcase, and they get to challenge the Grey Cup champion to a game of rugby to determine who the actual Grey Cup champion is.
All
I think I don't know. Someone's got to check my actual
right,
history.
stop
Somewhere down the
stalling for
road, there was
time. Who's going to
yeah.
be in your starting 15?
What you don't want to waste time on my crazy. The Toronto Arrows are going to win the Grey Cup on the weekend thing.
Yeah, but then they have to defend it on Monday Night Raw, and then we're going into the whole spiral.
Yeah, that is. There we go. Multi-talented squad that Toronto Arrows have. So yeah, like you said, it's way too early to be doing this, but why not? Why not? What are we doing if it's not having fun?
Exactly.
So I think obviously, as Jamie McKenzie did kind of allude to last week too, the Arrows do sign players and then release them in chunks for like social media and engagement, and get people like us talking about Sheridan, Ferguson, Marcello Wainwright all coming back, which are all kind of great signings too. I know like the Arrows love Wainwright. I know like he's quite the popular player like on the squad, and Ferguson obviously plenty of caps from the Canadian national team. Was kind of behind Higgins and Brody last year, but if for Andrew Ferguson is your third scrum half, you are doing something very right with your scrum halves.
Exactly, yeah.
And then Johnny Sheridan, I think, is always kind of is a very interesting player to me because it's like, especially, I mean, with what the Arrows rosters have been in like the past, I guess we'll go with the 2 full seasons, and even 2020, I guess too. It's like he's kind of always to me kind of clearly been like a depth player, like a depth winger on the team. But every time he gets put into a game, one, he starts pretty much all of the time when he gets put into a game, and two, he's usually great. Like
Yeah.
it's he plays pretty good when he does get his chance. So it's good to see him back too. All right, but anyways, on to your question. My way too early Arrows starting 15. So front row, I think, and it's like I think obviously they have 2 new signings in the front row plus Warden as the draft pick. So you got Sione and Salmon coming over from New Zealand. But it's like I don't know. Like I feel like until you kind of see them in like training camp or something, it's like, do you put them into the starting 15 or whatever? I mean, they're apparently they're quite good, but do you go with I think right now, I feel like right now I'm inclined to maybe kind of go Keith Quattro and Roland. But if training camp happens, I'm not
remember this is far too early.
Yeah, exactly. It's far too early.
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It's far too early. All this is going to change immediately. This is going to be outdated before the podcast even gets released.
Oh, it's standard then.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So why I don't know. Why not? Let's go with Keith Quach and Roland locks. One of the biggest acquisitions of the offseason the Arrows have made is at lock. So we'll go let's go Bailey Cellini at lock so far.
Okay.
And then I think the back row, I think you got to go Della Vega, Rumball, Foley. Based on who we got. Yeah, based on who we got signed so far.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Okay.
Scrum halves, we have Brody and Ferguson. So I think based on last year, I think you're giving Brody the nod in the 9 jersey. Ferguson will go to 21. And then like the backs are kind of interesting because obviously, like looking at the Arrows squad right now as it sits to date, there's obviously a few positions that they need to announce some players that are coming back or new signings in certain positions. So you do have to kind of spread this out a little bit. So I'm going fly half. I'm going with Kelly right now. Right. Right now I'm going to go with Kelly at fly half. Center, I know I just kind of said for Sione and Salmon that like, it's just we'll see what they look like at training camp or whatever. I think if Weta Tafuga is going to be kind of touted as the guy that's replacing Ben Lesage, I think that kind of, to me, I think sort of indicates that it's like you probably want him starting. Just because
Yep, that makes
if
sense.
that's going to be like your Ben Lesage guy, so I'm thinking Jones, Tafugga, and then in the centers, which then I'm going to go with my wingers are going to be Sheridan and Mirez, and my
Okay.
fullback would be
All right.
Malcolm. That's
All right. Okay. No, I get that. That seems
based,
like
like I said, it's way too early to do this though, but
yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah, of course it's fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's way too early to do this though.
All right. This will be my starting 15. Balls to the walls. Who cares? Let's just have some fun.
Oh
Gonna
God,
completely bamboozle the
you're
opposition.
about to say something like Lucas Rumball at fly half, aren't you? Like,
Well, you're the one that wants to see him score a drop goal, so
yeah, he can do it from flanker though.
that's true. Okay, I'm saying my front row: Sione, McRogers, and Salmon.
Oh, put McRogers ahead of Quattrin.
Oh, hey, McRogers scored a try at the start of the 2021 season, so I'm expecting him to do the exact same thing again, regardless of who the
Oh, you just
opposition
want
is.
him to start the first game of the season right now?
I want him to score a try in this first start in the first game of the season.
All right. Wow. Okay. All right. Wow. All right.
All right.
Cool. Okay. Keep going.
Locks. I'm going to pick Bailey as well, but I'm also going to go with Wadden as well.
Mm-hmm.
Although then again, if it is in the season, I want to pick Cellini because I want to see him get to 50 caps for the Arrows as soon as possible.
Okay, so you're picking Cellini. All right.
But this is just an invitational game. This is the Grey Cup halftime.
The Grey Cup halftime show, right? Post game, Money in the Bank post game versus the
yeah,
Ticats or Blue Bombers.
Yeah,
probably the Blue Bombers. I'm gonna get beat up by people from Hamilton now, though.
You're gonna get beat up by people from Hamilton just because. So
yeah, but if you trip the Ticats, you really get beat up by people.
That is true. Fine. So I'm saying in the back row, De La Vega, Rumble. Then I'm gonna go with Wainwright.
Go Wainwright. Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Cello. Scrum half, because he's been on the show, I've got to pick Fergie.
Oh, that's true. I didn't consider that. Yeah, we have to. That's why I started Keith too, by the way, because he's been on the show. You didn't start Keith, so you're betraying our guests on our show.
Yeah, well, we're both betraying. We're both terrible people. Okay, at fly half, I'm going to go with Will Kelly. Centers, I'm going to pick Jones, and even though I was considering putting him on the wing, I'm actually going to have Detroit as center as well.
That might be the take that you've been ripped for the most on this show.
Yeah, it is pretty much.
I think you should back it up. Put him on the wing. Do it.
Oh, but I have an interesting choice for the wing. So one of my wingers will be Gaston Mirez. But my other winger, Joaquin Tucolet. Because he was contracted for 2 years. So he's not going to be announced because he's still with the Arrows. And then at fullback, got to be Sammy the Boot. So yeah, that's my starting 15.
See, that's where I would bring that, because like, how's the way like the Arrows are wording that thing at the end of all their press releases though, where it's like they have 26 guys under contract.
They have
how's that worded?
So let me find the actual wording that they had on the most recent press release, which was for the re-signing of Michello, Sheridan, and Fergie. Is that the wording they have is the Arrows have now signed 26 players ahead of the club's 2022 MLR campaign.
They're at 26.
And the 2 players that have signed multi-year contracts were Cole Keith and Joaquin Tucolet.
Yeah, but they announced Keith coming back, though. The announcement was Keith. They announced Keith coming back.
No.
They still did the announcement. They have it. So you're breaking the rules because I said guys that they've announced.
I didn't say that. I said who's your starting 15 of players available. And just because you didn't read a press release from 2020,
but also
suddenly I'm the bad guy.
But also with Keith in, it's 26 without Tucolet included in that. It's still 26. Your math is not checking out here, sir.
Oh yeah, I keep forgetting about the trade deal.
Yeah, your math is not checking out.
I think they've actually signed 27.
Who would be the 27th guy?
The trade.
No, because James O'Neill's not signed yet. They just acquired his
He's
rights.
not signed. All right. Okay. All right. Fine. If we want to have it this way, so from his announcement in 2020, Mark Winokur said the following: Joaquin comes to us in somewhat unlikely fashion, but he is undoubtedly one of the top Pumas of the last decade, has experience at the highest levels of the international and pro game, can play almost every backline position and brings depth and class to our back line. He is making this move for all the right reasons, and we are excited to have him here on a multi-year deal. Now, multi means more than one, and vague enough to mean at least two. So I'm counting it.
I'm just like, I mean, that's fine. That's fine. Like we said, it's way too early, and plenty of things can change.
Of
Plenty of things
course,
can
it's
change,
far too early.
but
Far
they
too
haven't
early.
announced them yet, and you broke the rules of what we were doing. That's all I'm saying.
Fine. Okay.
They haven't announced that he's coming back yet. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Of the announced players, then
Of the announced
if we're
players.
doing it that way.
Yes.
My wingers will be Mires. My wingers will be Mires and Sheridan.
Oh, I was really hoping you'd say Mires and Detroit now.
Detroit's already my center. You know, let's get Tafuga. Let's get Tafuga on the ring.
You got to stick. You got to stick on brand. You have to stick on brand, Stu. You have to go with. Yeah,
and there's a fullback Rumble. Why not? Who cares? It doesn't mean it.
Okay, so who's your other flanker then?
Rumble and actually Rumble for every position on the team.
Just exactly.
We've been cloning him over the winter and to have 15 Rumbles ready to go.
You know what? That's fair. That's fair. That team probably wins games. That team
wins championships.
Yeah, you will literally never have the ball. It will be stolen at every breakdown.
Of course, and that's the team that cashes in money in the bank and wins the Grey Cup. That's how it happens. I don't make the rules. Okay.
Yeah. All right. A slight tangent. Do you have a Grey Cup prediction for this weekend? Since we are kind of chatting about it here,
I think that I honestly thought that the Argos would have beaten the Ticats, but obviously I was proven wrong about that.
You're too new to the CFL to know that it's like the Argos will choke.
Yeah,
the Argos will choke.
That's fair.
That's fair. Despite the fact I think they have the most Grey Cups in history.
Yeah, they have the most. They have the most Grey Cups, and also
recent memory is that they will find a way to lose a game somehow.
Well, that's the thing is
they didn't even not even a touchdown in the East Final at home.
So
brutal.
I think home advantage plays well for Hamilton. Yeah. That said, the Blue Bombers have been the strongest team in the CFL this season. So I don't know, maybe home advantage will bring Hamilton to host the Grey Cup at home. If that does happen, I don't know if there's enough alcohol in Hamilton to celebrate that, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes. All right. Okay, we're going to be bringing it back to Queens because we still need to talk about the Canadian University Men's Rugby Championship of 2021. So this was hosted by the Toronto Arrows, and it was presented on the Rugby Network. So if you haven't seen it already, you can watch all the footage there, all the matches, all the highlights. But we may be spoiling the result by now. The winners taking their third gold of the CUMRC.
I have a slight question. Do spoiler warnings really apply to sports?
Yeah. Don't you ever get home from a long day at work and turn on the news and say, here's the sport, and if you support any of these teams, maybe step out of the room for a moment?
No. I don't think honestly, I don't know if this is a hot take or whatever. Spoiler warnings should not apply to sports. A spoiler warnings should not apply to things that happen in real life and real time. Like spoiler warnings for a movie or a TV show, I get. Because it's like not everybody watches that at the same time. You don't want to like ruin it for everybody, but it's like it's a sport is a thing that actually happens.
Yeah, so I suppose.
You've had 2 weeks to watch this game too, if you have.
Yeah.
But it's like I always kind of picture like I guess my argument for like spoiler warnings, like I've always remembered like I guess like I was working downtown Toronto like during the Raptors playoff run when they won the championship in 2019, right? Yeah. And it was like there was some times where it's like I couldn't necessarily watch the game because I was working, But
Yeah.
it's like when I left work and I was like, oh, people are celebrating. The Raptors must have won. I didn't like leave work being like, you guys can't spoil this game for me because I was at work. And it's like I wasn't like leaving being like, oh, I wonder why people are jumping on buses right now. I'm like, oh, I'm assuming the Raptors won. It's a real life thing. People react to it in real time. Sports do not deserve spoiler warnings.
All
If you,
right, all
yeah, I'm
right,
saying.
all right. I get your point. Come on. All right. So the hosts were Queen's University. They won the bronze medal. Taking runner-up was UVic with the silver, and claiming their third gold to the surprise of no one really was.
You didn't pick them when we asked.
Yeah, because you picked them, and I had to pick another team. So
well, you can
anyway.
agree
So the
something.
Thunderbirds of UBC.
I gotta say, the toonie, the loony,
Yeah.
whatever we used. I think we used the loony this
The
time.
loony was super controversial though.
The loony was nowhere near as good at picking Canadian University rugby games. The Paladins did not show up for our loony in that first game against UBC. That was
the message got out to them too late.
Yeah, it was a tough go for the loony. The loony did not do well predicting that.
All right, now we're moving away from the cold confines of Canada.
How fun is watching rugby in the snow though? Before we move on,
what?
Like, because I mean,
snow rugby is fun to watch.
It's
not as fun to play.
I don't know, man. UBC looked like they were having fun, especially at the end of the game when they got to pick up a trophy. Those looked fun.
Yeah, lifting a trophy's fun. Getting tackled and the ball getting passed around and suddenly feeling 10 times harder, not as fun.
Yeah, it's always interesting because it's like I feel like whenever you end up with like snow in the game, it's like snow kind of becomes the story of the game. Regardless of it. And it's like it was actually like it was a pretty interesting game, right? Because it was like obviously like I thought both teams in the first half were doing well to deal with the snow. Like they were both teams were kind of able to string together some nice attacking phases at certain points. And obviously it went to the sheds at halftime with UBC up 8-0, which isn't which is like you kind of expect with that kind of weather, and also the fact that they play shorter games to make up for the fact that they have to play 3 games in like 5 days or right. But like it's like you kind of expect that low scoring game, but then like UBC just came out in the second half and just exploded. Just the the most like dynamic offense you could probably ever dream about putting together in snow. Like it didn't seem to like hold them up that much in the second half, and I guess they kind of figured it out. But it's always fun because it's like there's some really cool pictures that came from the game and stuff too. Obviously, like the Rugby Network was kind of having a little bit of fun with all the being covered in snow. There's all the Canadian rugby jokes about it. But it's like I don't know, man. It's snow. Snow kind of makes sports can make sports kind of fun. Sometimes it can take certain games kind of elevated. I feel like I wonder if like because it seemed like the game was getting some pretty decent traction like on social media and stuff. And I think part of that was also because people were like, hey, look at this blizzard that like, or it wasn't really a blizzard, but it's like, look at this this game that like UBC and UVic have to play in the snow here for a national championship. And it's like I think in a weird way, it's like the snow kind of gives it a little bit more traction. Just kind of like, watching even like just before games and stuff, you can kind of see like the pictures of the pitch. And even last night, you kind of see it with like that Monday or the Monday Night Football game last night. It's like, people were like that video of the kicker attempting a kick in like warm up that went like 40 yards wide because the wind just took it and shoved it to the stands. It's like it kind of slightly like goes viral just because it's like sometimes when you play like sports outside, it's like the weather can make it a little bit more interesting and stuff. And I think in a weird way, like as much as you would love to see like a final being contested in like perfect weather to allow like for like both teams to just be able to like execute and play the exact way that they would want to in a final, it's like sometimes the weather does also add a little bit of an interesting kind of like factor to it and stuff that does kind of make it a little bit fun too.
All right. Well, we're going to leave the cold confines of the Great White North and take this to Dubai, where we've had the first two rounds of the World Sevens. And, considering a number of Sevens greats for Canada, both on the men's and women's teams, have announced their retirement, it's the start of a rebuilding phase, I believe, for the Sevens team. And boy, are they going through some rebuilding
It's
because,
a rebuild. Yeah.
yeah. So, because of the current COVID restrictions, there's a few changes. So, for the men's tournament, there are only 12 teams. So, this was the same format as the Olympic Sevens. In the first event in Dubai, Canada placed 11th, beating only Japan in the 11th place playoff. And in round two, couldn't do it twice. They lost to Japan and finished 12th. In contrast to the Blitzbox, who finished first across both events. In the women's, this was a completely new format as there were only 10 teams. So there was two pools of 5 teams. Each team would do round robin, so they play the 4 other teams in their pool once, and from there they would be ranked, and then the top teams of each pool would play for gold, and so on and so forth. Canada finished 8th across both these events, and Australia women finished first across both events. So, as we were saying, it's a rebuild going on at the moment. Um, and the format will be changing. For example, Great Britain will be reverting back to England, Scotland, and Wales. So it'll be interesting to see how the Sevens take place in the new year. Let's focus on the here and now because we have some MLR trade news coming through. So, in a bit of confusion, there's the Arrows de la Vega and there's a new de la Vega joining the league. It's Joaquin de la Vega Mendia, who is joining Atlanta from Hindu, which is part of the URBA top 12 in Argentina. Los Angeles have signed the Canadian eligible prop, and I am definitely going to butcher this name, Les Leilulu Ali Makin. The most important bit, Canadian eligible. Also from LA is joining from the USA under 20s is Taz Smith. Keeping with the Gilchrist owned teams, Julian Dominguez has joined Austin from NOLA. John Roy Jenkinson has joined Rugby ATL from Griquas in South Africa. Terrell Pater has joined New England from Auckland. Brooklyn Hardiker has joined LA from the Randwick Greens in Australia. An Australian joining LA. What a surprise. Luke Beaucamp has left Houston and has joined Austin. So another Texan trade going on there. Alex Johnston, the older brother of Joe Johnston, will join the New England Free Jacks.
Oh, man.
Tavita Soul joins New England from the Bay of Plenty. Harry Wheeler, who decided to join the USA Sevens to hopefully get in with the Olympics, was unsuccessful in his endeavors, will not be returning to Rugby ATL and will be joining NOLA instead. And another big departure from ATL is that Mark O'Keefe is joining Austin. And after withdrawing from the league for 2021 to join in 2022, Chad London has also announced that he will be returning to the Dallas Jackals to join them for hopefully their inaugural season. Now, we've got a few news stories that we're going to have a little bit more of a deep dive into. The first of which is a player signing, which came about through unconventional means, to say the least. And it is that Canadian Andrew Coe is joining Rugby New York. But Andrew Coe didn't announce this, and Rugby New York didn't announce this. This came from the announcement of the Canada Sevens for Dubai.
It seems
so,
to
Derek,
be true.
It seems to be true.
Yeah, it is.
However, if I was Andrew Coe, I would be, how should I put this, a bit upset that you didn't get the chance to control the narrative at this point. From what I've gathered is that, he's excited to be joining New York, but again, he would have preferred if it had been under his.
It's definitely a weird. I mean, it's definitely a weird thing. For a weird way for that to be announced. I mean, on the other hand, it's like remember when we were complaining earlier that like Rugby Canada didn't. We were like, when we're talking about like just because there was this period of time this past like late summer into fall where it's like everybody was just ripping on literally every single thing Rugby Canada did. And it was like one of the things was like, oh, they said like Kyle Bailey played for the Nola Gold, and people were like, no, he's a Toronto Arrow. This trade happened 4 days ago. Like you should have updated this or whatever. And then it's like, and then now we fast forward and it's like, like Andrew Coe, like it hasn't been announced yet. You should. So it's like they've taken it now. Now they've gone too far. Now it's like not updating it on time, updating it too soon. I mean, it's kind of it's the
can't win
Goldilocks right now, man. It's too cold, it's too hot.
Yeah,
somewhere in the middle is going to be just right. I don't know. I mean, it's a nice pickup for Rugby New York. Are we not saying United anymore? Is this like?
Well, this is the interesting thing.
Have they like just really quietly changed their name? Is that like, are we not?
Yeah, I think so. On Twitter, their handle is now Rugby
New York. Yeah.
The is Rugby New York.
Yeah.
But their logo still says Rugby United New York.
I wonder if we're getting a little like when they release the kits, I wonder if we're getting a little updated branding.
Well, they did an updated branding last year. Come on, guys. You got to be consistent at some point.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because it's like, yeah, all the social media is just Rugby New York now, right? It's interesting. I don't know what's happening with that, but like
if they do a major rebrand, hopefully it's on their kit, which is hopefully being announced in time for Christmas. Hint.
Are we like? I don't know. Yeah. So are we not supposed to say Rooney or like the United?
I mean, we will. I mean, we're not being paid by them, so who cares? So
yeah. How do you pronounce RNY? Runny. That's still Rooney. That's just you pronouncing the U differently.
Yeah, we say it's Rooney, but
it's New York.
R and calling them New York from rugby. So
we're calling them New York. They really, anyway. I guess they really like rugby ATL. So now they're just rugby NY. I don't know. Whatever.
Oh, if it whatever works for them. All right. So we go from one player signing to an entire roster signing. So, this makes a pleasant change instead of waiting and getting like the drip feed. The Utah Warriors have announced their entire 2022 roster. Now, of course, if any injuries come up, they'll be making signings throughout the season to fill those shoes. But fans of the franchise will know a few names that come up, like Olive Khalifi, Mikey Te'au, Mika Kruse, Logan Targo. So it's not a complete rebrand, but there are, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 new signings, including the draft selections as well. So Emerson Pryor is the only name we care about because he's the only Canadian.
Wow, that's kind of mean to the rest of the Utah Warriors.
It's mean. It's accurate, but mean. So, I mean, that's the thing. They don't have. I say like they don't have. I was gonna say they don't have any big names like.
The MVP of the. They don't have any big names. They have the MVP.
I was about to say that. But some of the new names include like Reagan Leslie, Jamie Lane, from England at scrum half, Neil Saunders, because of course their Canadian scrum half is no longer with the team. At fly half is Mick O'Gara, former Leinster under 20s player. So that'll be interesting to see how they integrate into the squad. And also another Englishman, Connor Burns, as fullback, although as the case is with any fullback, he may be fullback, he may be wing. That's the thing. When you got Mikey Te'au and Mika Kruse who formed that partnership, are you really a fullback or are you just there just in case?
I mean, hey, Te'au didn't play every game last year. I think though, like it's nice. Obviously, like Pryor was they selected him in the draft, right? He was
Yeah.
one of two Canadians taken by an American team. The other Canadian was James O'Neill, and he is now back on a Canadian team. So, um, like it's I mean, I'm really honestly really happy that Brendan Sparks, is one of the GMs in the league that is willing to draft a Canadian, and that's beneficial for Canadian rugby. And you kind of look at the squad that Emerson Pryor is going to be a part of, right? So he's obviously a young front row player. And you kind of look at the Utah Warriors front row, and it's like, there's one, two, three, there's one, two, three, four Eagles in their front row. Obviously Chad Goff being a hooker, and then you got Angus McClellan, Paul Mullen, Ollie Khalifi. Right. And you got obviously Franco Vandenberg is another one of their loose head props, right? So he's been one of the better props in Major League Rugby throughout his time here too, right? And Tuveri Vugakoto's capped by Fiji, right? So it's like there's a lot of really high quality guys in the Utah Warriors front row, and it's like their pack did well last year. Like their scrum
Oh
did
yeah.
very well. Their scrum won them some games sometimes, right? And it's like
Well, they got the name of comeback kings. You don't get that by
yeah, like there's
having
the scrum,
weaknesses.
but even like I know it's like context might be key, like context is key and stuff, right? It's like that before the playoff game, right? The last game of the season when they played LA, right? Is like their scrum looked dominant against
Oh
LA.
yeah.
And then and I say context is key because maybe not LA's
Because
best game,
LA had
maybe not the best
guaranteed a home
squad, and
playoff.
then yeah,
They could
exactly.
have not turned up and they
Yeah,
would still have had the home
and
playoff.
then obviously LA, won the week after the big important one. But it's like their scrum was really good. The scrum was great throughout most of the year as well. And so excited to see a guy like Emerson Pryor get a chance to, play in that front row, right? And like I said, it's like there's four looks like four Eagles, four Eagles, an amazing South African prop and a guy capped by Fiji, right? So it's like there's some quality in that front row, and hopefully Pryor gets a shot at gets a shot at some game time, but it's gonna should be plenty of opportunity to kind of develop there. We kind of already talked about Andrew Coe. The other Rugby New York Canadian there is going to be Quinn Nawadi, as he was announced as part of their plethora of re-signings that they've announced over the past couple of weeks. As some of the teams that have been a little bit quieter this offseason are starting to make some noise here. And then the interesting one to me, so obviously like LA has signed a Canadian eligible prop, Les Lou A Ali Mackin, and Les obviously like it's interesting to see because it's like he's 29, um, right, and he's been playing for he's Canadian eligible through his late father is Canadian, right? I believe his mom is Samoan, so he's actually eligible to play for Australia, Canada, and Samoa. But so he played for the U20 Wallabies. He's 29 years old now, though. But like he played for the Brumbies between 2016 2020. Kind of got hurt, right? So he missed a lot of 2020, and then he was playing in Japan a bit before signing this contract. And you kind of look at it, and it's like it seems like in the past couple of years, it's like there's been a couple guys that have just kind of been found that are like Canadian eligible. Like obviously like Jason Higgins, right?
Yeah.
He ended up on the Arrows and on Team Canada, right? Because Rooney or Rugby in New York, I'm going to keep saying Rooney. But like New York, they kind of had like they attempted to sign him, right? And then they had some visa issues, and in like an act of good sportsmanship slash doing what's best for the player, alerted the Arrows to the fact that he's got a Canadian passport, right? So it's like you could
Yeah.
sign, and it's like, and then he's on the national team almost immediately
Yeah.
too, right? And then you have LA also signed Corey Thomas that comes over, another guy playing in Super Rugby comes over and is plays well for LA during the season and makes the national team almost instantly. Right. And it's like, I don't know what Les's aspirations are if he wants to play for the Canadian national team or not. But like, it's interesting kind of be like, it's just kind of how many guys like around the world like are doing things like playing in super rugby that are like, their dad was born in Canada, or like, maybe their dad was born in Canada, or their mom was born in somebody, like a parent was born in Canada, grandparent. And it's like you have some of these like guys that are Canadian eligible but playing in like super rugby.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like how many of those players are out there? I kind of wonder. Um, and I mean, I know like obviously, that's been one of the things that Rugby Canada like has been talking about is like player identification and stuff. And I wonder if there's, as we're kind of looking at this transition period, I wonder if that's something that, Rugby Canada is going to look at is like how to maybe potentially better identify like who around the world is actually eligible to play for Canada. Right. Or
Yeah,
at
that's
least, you know what I
valid.
mean? Just because it's like it's weird. Like it's interesting to see this like, oh, like a guy like a super rugby prop has been eligible to play for Canada, but he maybe hasn't. Maybe he doesn't want to, maybe he never wanted to, maybe he never thought about it. Um, and if that's the case, then like that's fine and stuff.
Hmm.
But like it's interesting because it's like, signings I think like less like Higgins and like Corey Thomas, it's kind of I think um Ross Brody maybe even to an extent, although I believe he was specifically found by Rugby Canada or somebody within Rugby Canada. Um
Yeah.
but like you kind of like look around, it's like I wonder how many guys are eligible to play for Canada and we don't necessarily know about.
That
Right.
is true.
That
Yeah.
are like floating around there, and it's like I wonder if that's something that Rugby Canada. So obviously, and I'm not necessarily saying that it's like that should not be done at like the expense of like developing like homegrown talent by any stretch of the
Yeah.
imagination. But like if
It's an option.
yeah, exactly, if World Rugby is going to say like these guys can play for you, then like
Yeah.
you know what I mean. It's like
Yeah.
yeah,
If
they're
the
worth a
option's
look
available to
anyways.
the player, it
Yeah,
should always be considered. Because I know there's been talk about this whole law change, like after a 3 year stand
yeah.
down period, you can play for another union which you're either
Which
born into, your parents
everyone
were born in,
either
or
loves or absolutely despises this rule
yeah.
change.
But and that's the issue of World Rugby. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be the issue of a player,
No,
because
yeah,
this
exactly.
because this has been a big thing, especially in Wales, because like um, Gareth Anscombe, New Zealand born and raised, and actually played against England in the New Zealand under 20s
Mm,
World Championship. But when you're going up against Dan Carter, you're not getting selected. So
yeah.
his grandmother was Welsh, came to Cardiff, and now plays for the Ospreys and for Wales as well.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it
so
happens
I
in
was in,
every sport. It
yeah,
happens in a lot of sports and stuff. I mean, I think definitely the people that are criticizing the rule change should definitely have certainly have valid complaints and stuff. But
yeah,
um, it is like it is one of those things where it's like, you know, I think to an extent it's like whether you agree with it or not, that's the new rule. And if there's players that are gonna like if World Rugby saying a player is eligible for you, then it's like they're worth taking a look at, right? And it's
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like if so, it's worth being if you have a player that's part of your player pool that could potentially play for you, it is worth taking a look at. And it's like, I mean, you kind of look at the landscape now and it's like, like I said, it's like for this in particular player, it's like he's 29 years old already. So by the time the 2027 World Cup rolls around, right? Like oh my gosh, I should not have started a sentence where I was going to do math. That was a bad
35.
idea. Thank you, Stu. Yeah. So he's going to be 35 years old, right? So it's like maybe, maybe in the current state of rugby Canada, maybe that player is not that as appealing, right? Um, just because of,
True. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like you're clearly, as we kind of mentioned with the sevens teams, it's like Rugby Canada's men's team is going to go through like a rebuild too, right?
yeah,
Because it's like there's going to be obviously there's going to be guys that retire before they have a chance to compete at a World Cup again. Probably before they have a chance to even compete in the qualification stage for the World Cup again. There's probably going to be some guys that retire, right? And it's like you're gonna have to like it's kind of about like you have to bring in the new talent and stuff. So I'm not necessarily saying that like less should be like put them on Team Canada or anything, but it's like it does just kind of make you think. It's like, oh, I wonder if like because it's like his like a player like that, it's like if his dad was born in Canada and therefore eligible, like he's been eligible for Canada like his whole life,
Yeah.
right? So it's like can you find that player when they're 20, right,
Yeah.
or
I
something, and
suppose
just
you
be
could.
like, hey man, look, you play in country X, right? It's like the guy that plays your position, like you said, you use that example of Dan Carter, like a
Yeah.
Welsh player behind, or a guy that could be qualified for Wales behind Dan Carter. And it's like, yeah, dude, you have one of the best players in the world ahead of you at your position. Like, you're not going to play for this team. So, like, come over here, possible. Um, but I don't know. It's just one of those signings. It just kind of makes you think a little bit. Like, I wonder how many guys are out there that are eligible for Canada that, like, I don't want to say are unknown because I'm assuming folks that are in Rugby Canada know a lot more than I do. But like, yeah, it's interesting when these guys kind of pop up in MLR, and then part of the announcement is that, oh yeah, they're Canadian eligible, by the way. It's either that or LA's doing a really good job of finding guys that can count as domestic.
Probably both. All right, we're going to move on to the final thing, which
Hmm.
is that it's been a preseason fixture announcement, and that is that Rugby Canada's West Selects, which will be a combination of players assembled from the Coastal Cup, will face MLR's Seattle Seawolves
Nice.
on January 28th, 2022, in a preseason fixture.
Great.
So, again, the Coastal Cup is seems to have been paying dividends to allow this preseason fixture to come along. Now, it will be run by Phil Mack, who is the head coach of the Pacific Pride. So I can expect a lot of Pacific Pride players to be in this squad. Then again, I'm also expecting Vancouver Wave players to be in as well. Probably UBC on top of that. A mixture of those three teams will probably be the bulk of this.
Well, it depends on how. I mean, I guess it depends on how you kind of go about doing it, right? Like this, there was talented guys mixed throughout the league and
Well,
stuff, even if they were on
well,
teams that didn't necessarily perform as well through the standings. But
well. This is what they say. So the Canada West Selects will feature a 23-player roster out of a talent pool of roughly 245 athletes. So that's more than 10 athletes per position. Um,
yeah,
when asked, Phil Mack said, "We are very excited to be given the opportunity to play Seattle, coming off the back of a successful Coastal Cup. We feel it's a well-deserved reward for the young players who are
yeah.
involved."
It just, I mean, it sounds great. It sounds like it's just really, I mean, no matter what the breakdown of players as far as like team representation ends up being in the from the Coastal Cup, but I mean, to me it just sounds like it's, I mean, Coastal Cup selects, it sounds like a very easy way of saying the Coastal Cup All-Star team. Um it's essentially who's playing the Seattle Seawolves, which is good. I think the one thing is like I think the Seattle Seawolves, I believe, throughout their kind of history, and obviously, they've had a lot of players in BC. We talked to Curry Hitchborn on the podcast. He talked about how he was a part of building like the inaugural team. Phil Max obviously played there, player coach there, who is obviously going to be the coach on the other side, as you just stated. And it's like the Seattle Seawolves have always kind of had like a little bit of that connection to like BC rugby. And I mean, they've played like preseason games against like the Crimson Tide previously as well, right? So it's it's cool to see Seattle still kind of keep, it's cool to see Seattle and I guess BC rugby slash the Coastal Cups and slash all those, smaller individual unions that comprise both of those larger entities. Kind of keeping up this relationship with the West Coast team, right? And and it's a good, it'll hopefully, the other thing that's obviously kind of interesting being a preseason game and stuff, it's like, I think you kind of said, Stu, it's like guys get hurt in training, guys get hurt in training camp, guys get hurt in preseason games. I think, because of that too, it's like for a lot of these guys that are playing in the Coastal Cup, it's like, hey, maybe it's your like one last shot to impress an MLR team too, like in a game against an MLR team, right? And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And it's like maybe a late shot at earning a contract for the season too, right? So I'm sure it'll be for the guys in the Coastal Cup and stuff. I'm sure there'll be plenty to play for. Um, and excited to see who ends up on that roster too.
All right. Well, there doesn't seem to be a lot of rugby going on this weekend. Obviously, the Sevens has come to an end until the new year. And it is the Champions and Challenge Cups. That means there will be no URC or no Premiership. So, in previous years, the Champions and Challenge Cup has been on the zone. We haven't got a confirmation of that this year. However, if you are desperate to see certain games and you want to ensure that you can see it, you can always pay on epcr.tv to catch those European games. Well, Derek, I believe that's it for this week. If you enjoyed listening and watching our episodes, you can listen to our previous episodes on Spotify or Anchor FM. If you like to watch the episodes, you can watch our backlog of episodes on YouTube. And if you want to interact with us on social media, if you want to give your reviews on how well we're doing, you can find us on all social media platforms at Rouge Rugby. If you want to meet Derek and speak to him, where can they find you on social media?
I don't know. I don't know if people can like physically meet and speak to me throughout social media, but
you're just part of the metaverse, Derek.
yeah,
Get with the times, man.
There we go. Yeah, all right, okay. I was gonna say you must know some social media websites that I do not know about. I guess if you can randomly run into me if you're walking around Oshawa, I guess maybe that's a possibility. I don't know. I so if to contact me on social media though, it's at Brissett the Jet on across all social media platforms. BRESSETTE. If you're listening, if you are watching this, it's just written on the screen right now, so you can just look at it.
Yeah, it's so convenient.
Yeah, exactly.
This is why you need to watch us on YouTube.
Yeah, you watch on YouTube, listen on Spotify, Apple, listen, all the big ones. And it's and also I feel like the one thing we always neglect to mention, Stu, because I'm going to throw this back to you and you're going to say your social medias and how the A in your name is actually a 4 and all that fancy way you have your Twitter handle written. We always forget to mention that we have an email address too, which is
that is true.
LaRougeRugby@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out to that as well. And yeah, leave a review, subscribe. As I said, it's 100 episodes, man. If you enjoy this, tell your friends about it. If you really enjoy this, tell your enemies about it too. Maybe it'll be a bonding thing that brings you together after. And now, yeah, Stu, now your social media things.
Okay, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hardman. If you're watching this, you can obviously see how it's spelled below. But if you're listening to it, it's spelled H, the number 4, RDMAN. And if you're a person that is involved in rugby within Canada, you can email us at therougerugbypodcast@gmail.com.
I just said that.
I know, I'm reiterating it.
Okay, fine. I'll let you do it.
Because it's one thing of being signed up to mailing lists and another thing of actually having people on the podcast.
Yeah.
So if you are involved in Rugby Canada and you have a story that you want to tell us, please email us. Again, that email is therougerugbypodcast@gmail.com. All right. I think that's it for our episode. Derek, as always, thank you for joining me. And thank you for joining us. We hope you can join us again next time.